Welcome to Reread, where I'm rereading through the expanded universe in chronological order. And folks, we are on the episode 1 comic books. I'm going to talk about 5 comic books today, and this one's going to be pretty brief too. The first one is Star Wars 1/2. It was by Wizard. Wizard did these special things where you get the 1/2 issue, and of course Star Wars was up for grabs because it was the big thing back in the day. And this one doesn't have that much. It just kind of pull some stuff before or around or during the movie. And the only things that I could really find that were that different is that Qui-Gon does something where he helps out with some slaves, or he's kind to them or something. He does something nice for them. And it's very just short intervals of everyone, or people thinking back of the events of episode 1 and what happened. Also, the Queen and Jar Jar have a longer conversation on the ship on the way. I think they're coming back from Coruscant and going to Naboo, and they're talking about their differences or whatnot, trying to understand each other better. Other than that, it's really not that good. It's really not that good. The next one is the episode 1 Anakin Skywalker one-shot. Basically, it's just a short adventure of him trying to find parts for his speeder. That's his pod racer, and he's looking for 2 parts. Qui-Gon's going to provide the power charger, I believe, but the other part he has to find, and he does, because he lets a Womp Rat go free, and the Womp Rat just happens to go to places and help him discover parts that he needs. I don't know. It's really weird. It is a short adventure that leads up to the events of episode 1. Like, it ends with Watto calling him into the store, and he sees these strangers, and is that an angel? Remember, because that was the whole thing about calling Padme an angel. Again, not that good. The Obi-Wan is probably the worst out of all these, because it's basically just him recounting his adventure to Yoda from episode 1, And the only interesting thing about it was in the comic book, when he jumps up, he kills Darth Maul, I never could see if he slashed on the way up or the way down. In the comic book, it says he slashed on the way up and then somersaulted over him. And when Darth Maul turned around, that's when he realized he'd been cut in half. Which is kind of weird. fell in half pieces. That was the only interesting thing about it, but it is an exact rehash of episode 1. I can't remember who wrote this. I didn't write this down. But they did zero work. They did zero work on this book. They just saw the movie, wrote it word for word, what Obi-Wan saw, cashed their check, and left for the day. The next one is on Queen Amidala. This is an adventure here where Padme and Jar Binks. Well, Jar Jar is starting off where it's the pod race scene. The pod racer's getting ready. Anakin and Qui-Gon are still in the background talking to each other, I guess. And Jar Jar sees this little insect, this like mosquito or whatever, come over and take out a little power chip from Anakin's pod racer. And the pod racer won't go without it. So Jar Jar tries to get it back. He runs off. Padme follows him. Says, "What's going on?" He said, "This insect took the power pack." So they chase it all through Mos Espa. And then when they get to some distant, they go out of town into a moisture farm, an old abandoned moisture farm, which still works. And in fact, there's a pond, like a little pond of water in this desert planet. There's just a pond of water just sitting there in the arid dry. That's kind of weird. But the mosquitoes or these insects are intelligent. And Padme senses that. She says, "Will you please help us? We need that power pack for our pod racer. I will help you fix your water evaporator if you help us," because they just need to keep the water flowing. And there's these 2 Gamorrean slavers that they run into early through the city who start chasing them. And so she asks if the insects will take care of the Gamorrean slavers while she does she fixes their water evaporator. Well, Jar Jar really wants water because he comes from a water planet, and he's so happy he dives in there and gets all cool. But then when he comes out, he frightens the Gamorreans because they didn't know of anyone coming out of the water, and they accidentally fall in, and of course they can't swim. At that point, Padme fixes the water evaporator, and more water, just like tidal waves of water, come in. I mean, shoot. They should make cash money. It seems like there's $1 billion just in that little pond there. But this big tidal wave comes and, I guess destroys the slavers. Either way, they get away. the insects are happy and they have the piece back, and they give it right as Anakin's coming out to his pod racer. So isn't that nice that, you know, he's always missing parts before the big thing. At least it was an original story. At least it was an original story, I guess. And the last one is from Qui-Gon. This is the one I remember the most, and this is the one that's actually the best one. And I checked on it after I read it. This is the one written by Ryder Wenham. Of course it's going to be good. This one shows basically Watto getting an offer from Gardola the Hutt, 50,000 whoopee whoopee for Anakin Skywalker. She wants to employ him to pod race for him. He's like, oh no, I lost him to Qui-Gon. So he comes up with a plan to get some henchmen to knock off Qui-Gon and then capture, or at least leave Anakin on Tatooine. Convince him to leave Anakin on Tatooine so that he can sell him to Gardola the Hutt. And it's the betrayal. And I remember this. I just couldn't remember where it was found, because I remember that was interesting, that Watto is always double dealing. Qui-Gon finds out, calls him out on it. And then this is also where Qui-Gon sells the pod racer to Sebulba. And we know that Sebulba ends up with Anakin's pod racer. Somehow he bought it. And I just couldn't remember again. I said, where was that talked about? And it's in this comic book. And out of all the adventures, this one was the most memorable to me and the most enjoyable. And of course, Ryder Wenham is going to give an effort. And really, out of all of those, it is the best one of these comic books, hands down. But that's not saying much. All right, folks, that's it for now. See you next time.